Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding Cannabis. Today, we are back with Dawn, who is about 1 week before the end of her 12-week break and cannabis break. And we're going to check out what's going on. And we're going to talk about how to step out of the cannabis break, which is for some people, the trickiest part, and for some people, the easiest part. So we're going to talk to Don and see how's it going. And let's begin.
Oh, look at me. I'm the crooked branch hanging off of my family tree. When I'm gone, will I be who I was before, or will I be another me?
Hello, Don.
Hello.
How are you? How's it going?
Um,
It's been 11 weeks already.
yeah, I know. I know. I can't believe I made it this far. I've surprised myself, but yeah, I'm doing well with the program. And yeah, I'm kind of curious how things go after, as I move out of or transition out of the break, and still giving it some thought as if I want to continue the break, prolong it a little bit longer, or um, give it a try again. It's still kind of working that through right now.
Yeah. Do you have any cannabis cravings?
I have, yes, like pretty much throughout this entire time, but it hasn't been a constant or a daily craving. It's been more situational, I
Yeah.
think, where there's for me, it's mainly been either, I've talked about having physical pain. That's been a trigger for me of causing the craving, because I've been reliant on that as a medicine. But also just stress, emotional stress, stress from work or life stressors. I've in the past resorted to cannabis as an escape, and even just temporarily, just to escape the overwhelming emotions. It kind of it's like taking a little vacation from that, and not having that during these times has been definitely a challenge. I think I emailed you the other day saying how I've had some trying times lately, and I think I've kind of gone through the whole spectrum of issues that I can encounter through these 3 months rather, which have been, the ultimate test for me, because in the past, when I've made these attempts to take the break, usually I cave when something comes up, some kind of issue pops up, whether it be a pain thing, or for me, I think even more so the pain. I've learned to deal with that. I found other tools, but it's the emotional upsets that have come up that has really been a challenge, where when something happens that your mind keeps replaying it over and over, some kind of event that you feel uneasy about. And I'm the kind of person, I overthink it, I overanalyze things, and it's when I get myself in that loop, it's easy to get out of it if I smoke. It kind of breaks that cycle, and I can then think of other things and give my mind and my emotions a break for a bit and tap into a different side of myself. And not having that option has been interesting. It's been challenging, but it's also allowed me to overcome some of these issues and find other ways to deal with it, and really kind of sit with how I'm feeling and figuring out, why do I feel this way? Why is this so upsetting for me? So that's what I think is good. It was as hard as it has been. That is actually what I was looking for with this break, is to be able to just learn and decipher things for myself, and not escaping, and forgetting, and then later the things just surface and pop up again because I didn't deal with it when I should have, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely stated at the beginning of all this that this is what you wanted, and in part to find new solutions to old
Hmm.
problems. And I want to say a few things about the process that you had watching it from the outside, and of course combining it with the experience I have running the workshops here in Israel. There's dozens of people who are trying to quit, who are sort of passing under my supervising eye. And everyone's different. Everyone's different, Don. Your process was just different. There's people who struggle just like you did and more. There's people who don't struggle at all. It's been so easy for them, and
Hmm.
everybody else envy them. And there's people, and sometimes there's like super smokers, like they smoke like 50 grams a month, and with like crazy amounts. And
Hmm.
some people smoke less, some people are more addicted, some people are less addicted. And the gravitational pull towards the black hole of dependency is very powerful for some and
Hmm.
very light for others. And so going back to smoking weed for somebody like you might be different than anybody else. And it's all about the attitude. What
Hmm.
you've done now is you've proven to yourself that you are not dependent on cannabis. You
Hmm.
can actually, you have other tools. You're suffering, but you have other tools that you can use at your disposal, even if cannabis is not available. And there is a responsible adult in charge of the medicine cabinet. Now,
Yeah.
there are two reasons why Don would want to smoke cannabis going forward. There is the situational place where you want to use cannabis as a medicine.
Hmm.
And you've been describing it all throughout the break. You've basically prevented yourself from using the medicine, A, because you wanted to find other solutions, and
Hmm.
B, because the inner child in you has proven itself to be unfit to use the medication because it's been abusing it,
Hmm.
using it more than it should. And that's the thing about virtually everybody who has cannabis dependency. We usually use it as a medicine or just as a fun thing, but usually as a medicine. Usually we need it as a medicine,
Hmm.
and we deprive ourselves from the right to use it as a medicine because we've abused it. And so going back to use it as a medicine will be under the control of the adult.
Right.
And that can happen on a very specific times, and the amount that you'll have to use can be also monitored and moderated. Okay. Now,
Hmm.
there's also Dawn, the inner child, which you can choose a different name for her if you want, just to distinguish, that might want to smoke cannabis for fun. Now that you've done the break, there's going to be a situational setting with friends, for example. Maybe it's your birthday, or maybe it's whatever, the equinox. You are actually wrapping up your cannabis break on the equinox. I don't know if
Right.
you celebrate these holidays, but both Christianity, Judaism, they're all based on pagan holidays.
Hmm.
The church is not going to admit it, but it's true.
Right.
And in Christianity, it became Easter. In Judaism, it became Passover. Well, Easter came after Passover, but they all
Hmm.
derived the same place of the equinox, which is essentially the time of rebirth. And it's amazing to me how it all got timed out, whether you planned on it or not, so that you're literally being reborn into the world as a person who you no longer a cannabis smoker, Don.
Yeah.
You're a non-cannabis smoker that potentially sometimes using cannabis as they choose to.
Hmm.
There's a difference between being somebody who's I'm a cannabis consumer who sometimes takes breaks versus I'm not a cannabis consumer.
Right.
Sometimes I choose to use cannabis for various purposes, either medicinal or for recreational reasons. But I'm no longer a cannabis user. You might want to go back to being a user, and that's okay. It is all up to you. And what you're going to be doing over the next week, which is like, oh, out of 12 weeks, we now shrunk it into 1 week. But it's okay, because it's the same process that when I run my workshops, they're usually only 3 weeks, no, 4 weeks. And usually in the fourth week, that's exactly what everybody's doing. And in fact, I have a workshop happening right now, and you're right in line with them. They're all doing what I'm going to tell you to do right now. They're all doing.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is. I want you to take the next few days to find out the needs of the inner child and the desires in terms of why they want cannabis and when. So imagine you're the adult. Imagine your son comes to you and says, well, Mom, I want to be eating candy. And say, well, it's a bad example, but I want to be able to do this and that. I don't know, something that's not
Play
good
video
to do.
games.
Exactly.
That relates with me.
Yes. They
With
play
my
video
son.
games. Great.
Yeah.
And so you go to say, well, listen, I want you to tell me all the times when you want to play video games. We have to choose times when it's allowed and times when it's not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to say, well, I want to play them every day after school, and then after I do my homework, and also on Saturdays I want to be playing all day. I basically want to have that day when you can't tell me when to play and when not to play, just as an example. And you say,
Mm-hmm.
well, listen, that's all nice and dandy, but it's too much. So first things first, you got to do your homework. So you can't get it before you do your homework. But after you do your homework, you can do it for, 2 hours, blah, 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 whatever, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the inner adult has their own criteria that they choose. But when you do the inner child, I want you to do it as a writing exercise.
Okay.
And literally put yourself in this child mode. Do whatever you need to do to put something that you've done as a child that you haven't done in a while. For me, it could be as easy as taking a poof and lying on the floor on top of the poof and reading a book. I used to do that a lot when I was a kid. And whenever I do that, that pressure on my stomach brings that inner child in me. And I can get into that mode. And if I take a pen and paper, I can just write down and write. Let the inner child write what she wants, Dawn. What does she want? And don't be judgmental. The inner adult is not there.
Right.
Just writing everything you want. Give it a day and then sit down and write the same thing as the inner adult. What does the inner adult say? The inner adult says, well, listen, first of all, I want to be able to reuse this medicine responsibly because we've abused it. I had to prevent it from us. And I had to prove it to you, the inner child, that we can do without it. But we don't want to, the point is not to suffer. Cannabis is a powerful tool. The reason we're doing this program, Dawn, is because we want to be able to allow you, we want to be able to enable you to regain command over this substance. We regain the key to the medicine cabinet. And now you want to be able to use it. Now here's the trick. That means you have to get closer to the black hole. And the black hole has a freaking unbelievably powerful gravity pull. Because once we smoke cannabis, the ability to see the perspective as you see it now is no longer there. And we have to remember all the reasons and all the perspectives and the feeling that you have, that decisiveness. You have to remember it, even though that the decisiveness is not there. So, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
My little thing fell down.
Oh.
So, it's risky. It is risky because we're getting close to that black hole, and potentially we're, and so you gotta be careful. But that's the whole point of the process. The analogy I give in these classes I say, oh, listen, you have a kingdom. Imagine you're the king or you're the queen, Dawn. And one of your, your army commander comes to you and say, Your Majesty, the Queen, somebody has invaded our kingdom and has taken over one of those beautiful hills that are overlooking the ocean. And they're saying that hill is mine. It no longer belongs to Don. I say, what hill? What are you talking about? Oh, it's the cannabis hill. You're no longer allowed. It's no longer yours. Are you going to let addiction conquer? You're going to let dependency conquer that hill in your kingdom? Or you're going to tell the army, the head of the army, you're going to take down the troops and you're going to go there and you're going to win that hill back. I want to be able to go there myself. I want to be able to visit that hill. It's mine. And this is what doesn't resonate with me with the whole AA thing. Yes, we can get to a point where we say to ourselves, I have an addiction problem, I have this addictive tendency, or I have this place in my psyche where I need to not be smoking for a year. But if we say to ourselves, I'm just one of those people who cannot smoke cannabis forever because I have no sense of moderation, then we're basically saying, well, okay, let them have that hill. Well, what are they going to conquer next? Cannabis is not the issue. Moderation is. And if moderation is the enemy, they're going to conquer one hill. Tomorrow, they're going to do it with something else. They're going to do it with food. They're going to do it with video games. They're going to do it with whatever. Trust me, it's going to find something to conquer. No, we're not going to be able to do that. This is what this program is about. And for that, we gotta get into battle. We got to bleed a little bit. We got to go near the black hole, and we got to do it responsibly, and we got to track what's happening, and we got to make sure that when we feel that gravitational pull, if we smoked, after a while that we haven't, in the beginning, it's fine. Oh yeah, it's nice. And after, a few weeks, whatever agreement we have between the inner adult and the inner child, and I'll talk about that in a second, whatever agreement that we have between them, suddenly the next day we're like, oh, I have that feeling I want to smoke again. Is it medicinal? Is it not? We start giving ourselves excuses right there to catch and say, whoa, it's pulling me. It's okay. It's okay. I'm just noticing it. That means, whoa, I got to extend that time where I access the medicine cabinet. This is very specific day-to-day noticing what is happening. Now, how do we go into it? If we're going to say, okay, I'm going back to the gravitational orbit around that black hole, and I'm just going to stay there, then in a moment of not noticing, we're going to get pulled back in. So we got to balance it out. We got to choose a particular constitution or contract that we set with ourselves that is not going to allow us to get pulled in. That is the amount that we're using, the frequency that we're using. We play with frequency, we play with amount. It's not going to be that common, that often. When you do the exercise with the inner child and the inner adult, there should be some kind of gap between the desires of the inner child, of Don, the inner child, and the desires of the inner adult. The inner adult, wants to say, we don't need cannabis at all, maybe only medicinally when we need it. And the inner child says, well, but it's also my toy. It's also like, I'm a human being. Let me play. What do you want from me? It reminds me of like when I was growing up and I got my driver's license. And here in Israel, it's not like in the US, everybody can get it. It's super easy. Here in Israel, you got to pay a shitload of money and do like 20 something plus lessons. And it's a process. And I did my license, and my dad tells me, you can't use the car unless you take it to the store to help with the family chores, but you can't take it out for fun. And I said, well, what's the point? That's why I wanted a license. That's why I busted my ass to pay for it.
Right.
That's so I can help with the family chores. Well, it's nice. I'm a good kid, but I'll gladly help. But I want to. So I went and bought my own car. That pissed him off. You don't want to get to the point where the child does something that's going to piss you off. You want to give the child something, at least at some point. You don't have to do it now if you're not sure of it. So what do? So we do the exercise with the child, we do the exercise with the adult, we look at the gap, and be in touch with me during that time via email if you need any help. But you gotta create some kind of a truce between the inner adult and the inner child, some kind of an agreement. We're in this together. Did you get everything you want? Yeah, I did. I wanted more, but I understand. Did you get everything you want, inner adult? Yes, I
Yeah.
did. I'm happy with it, but we're going to have to monitor that. We're
Mhm.
going to see. So now, what do you choose? I'll give you examples of what people choose, and that's going to give you the ability to make a decision for yourself. Some people decide to, so first of all, you can choose only to use it medicinally, which is perfectly fine, and give the inner child, in another 12 weeks, we're going to evaluate whether you can use it for um, recreationally. But first, I want to see how we reintroduce this into our systems. I want to see, I want to check that gravitational pull. It's like a parent telling the kid, let me go into the pool, into the, I don't know, into the river myself before you come in with me. So I make sure that the current is not too strong.
Mhm.
And you stay on the shore. And we only going to be using cannabis for the next 3 months for medicinal purposes. But give that inner child a timeline, because if you don't, it's like saying no more video games until further notice.
Right.
Well, they're going to rebel because they
Mhm.
need to know how long
Yep.
is the punishment, right?
Mhm.
So you give that time. That's one opportunity. Another opportunity, another possibility is to give a voucher. So, for example, somebody in my class has said, for the next 6 months, I'm giving myself I think it was a 10-time voucher. So in 6 months, he can use cannabis for 10 times. And every time the inner child says, I want cannabis, the inner adult says, are you sure? You have 7 times left. Okay, click. Now you have 6. Here,
Yeah.
use it. Okay. Now, what does it mean to use it? Can I use it for a whole day? Or is it just a few minutes? Is it one
Right.
hit? Is it one joint? Some people need everything written down,
Mhm.
everything, because if not, they found workarounds. Well, I'm on a break now. I have my ticket, my voucher I can use for a 24-hour period. Maybe that's the agreement, whatever. My inner child, when I use cannabis, my inner child says, when I get to use cannabis, you're out of my room. I can use it as much as I want, however I want, because I don't want you around. And if I want to blast myself up, and it's called in Hebrew kahana, which means you use it, you just use it. Now, the inner child doesn't like to do that every time. And it turns out that every time I do it, the inner child starts realizing that it's not worth it. And it's like, oh, I'm starting not to like that when I use it too much. It's starting to feel icky. But I like I like the ability to just at least have one day, on my birthday, to
Mhm.
be able to use it as much as I want. For some people, this is not good, because the second you do that, it just brings back old habits, so on and so forth. There's million possibilities you can skin that cat. You can say only on weekends. You can say some people, and it worked for some. I know people it worked for them. They do 3 weeks with no weed and 1 week that they can smoke weed, no problem. I think that if I read from you your your patterns, you have a
Mhm.
child, you have a new way of operating with that child, you want to be present. I think, if I may project, that
Mhm.
whatever agreement you do with yourself, you got to make sure that it's not overstepping these boundaries of this relationship that you've developed with your child, with your son, this clean relationship that you have with your day-to-day tasks, and
Mhm.
just find that bonus time,
Mhm.
that this is my time, that I can use cannabis for recreational reasons out of joy. And whenever you use that, it cannot be close enough. Like if you've taken it medicinally yesterday, then today is not a good day to take it recreationally. You
Mhm.
are a mother, a natural mother. You have that ability to say what is really right.
Mhm.
The purpose, the process this week is to massage that desire, that discrepancy in desire between the inner child and the inner adult. Find a good contract to do between them, write it down and sign it as the inner adult and the inner child. And this is what you go out to the world with. And I recommend doing it for the next 3 months. A year is too long because you don't know where you're going to be in 6 months. And you don't know
Mhm.
how it's going to feel. You got to try it out and start slow. Start slow, reintroducing into your system, seeing how it is for you. If it brings back old habits that you don't like, boom, you cutting it immediately, taking a breath, taking a step backwards, and building it in. And you
Mhm.
can ask me any questions you want, but it's that's the process. That's the process. And you use the word in the last meeting that you next week. Unfortunately, I'm not available on Sunday,
Mhm.
but we can either do it a day before, a day after, or something like that. We can figure it out, or you can do it on your own. Do a little ritual to
Mhm.
step out of this. Do you remember our ritual that we've done, or you've done it alone?
Yes.
We did it together,
Well,
right?
we spoke about it, yeah, and I read my thank you letter to you.
Yeah.
I shared that, but then that evening I did the ritual on my own. But I think we had spoke about preparing for it.
Excellent. So we're sort of preparing for it now. I want you
Mhm.
to do a ritual and take yourself out of that place. You've done it. Celebrate that success. Not
Right.
necessarily with a fat big joint, but maybe that's the day that you want to. You want to see, probably not a big fat joint, but it's up to you. This is the beauty. You're the queen. This is your kingdom. There is no one that can judge you. There is no one that can tell you what to do. You have regained command over your cannabis use. You
Mhm.
have regained command over the medicine cabinet. You are in control. You are a woman of your word. And you have a word that whenever you say it, when you're going to say it in that ritual with that contract for those 3 months, you're going to uphold it,
Mhm.
because you don't have a choice, because you've said the word, and because this is how you run your kingdom. You've proven yourself that you have that kind of strength, and we have to uphold it. It's not automatic. You still have
Mhm.
to, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have days where it's going to be a struggle. Life is a struggle. It's just the way it is. We have to live with it. But if we break the word, then we go back to step one. Because once we break it once, the next time it gets so much easier to do it
Yep.
exponentially. And then the process has to be rebuilt. And we don't want that. Like, you've worked so hard to strengthen your word. And it's now powerful. It has
Mhm.
strength in it. Okay. And so that's the process. You say the word, you know, ta 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 ta. Your word, if I'm not mistaken, was wholeheartedly swear.
Swear.
Wholeheartedly
Yeah.
swear.
Yes.
Yes,
Wholeheartedly swear. Yes.
yes. So I wholeheartedly swear that in the next 3 months, ta 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 ta,
Mhm.
boom. But now it's slightly easier and slightly harder. Slightly harder because you're close to that gravitational pull and you have that option. We have the option, desire comes. We're
Yep.
allowing desire to pop back up. But if it pops back too much, we cut its head, cut it at the source. And the
Mhm.
contract is that lever. The contract is that ability. And if the inner child knows that if there's going to be any abuse, then in 3 months, we're not going to be evaluating the recreational use. Like there's always that check. Now, the goal, I'm speaking a lot today, but we have a lot to cover.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is obviously not to be needing any contract. As long as we have a contract, we have a dependency issue. We're still afraid of something. The goal is to be orbiting around that black hole beautifully with no worry, just knowing exactly that sweet spot of every time the thought to be using cannabis, anytime the desire comes up, the inner adult is there to say, is it time? Is it the place? When's the last time we smoked? How do we feel? What do we have to accomplish? Is it good? Is it not good? That's coming. But that takes time. That takes finding that habit, redefine the habit. We're restructuring our habits with cannabis. We allow ourselves to become consciously high.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're consciously in a high place, consciously high, because we're at that place where nothing is above us. Dependency, the cannabis is not above us. It's not deciding for us. We are at that top chair. We're the ones making a decision. That's done with the contract, with the agreement, every time, loosening up until we get to the point where we say, and it can take a few years, it can take 3 times to say, I'm opening the faucet. Let's see what happens. Which for me, after all these years, and I run workshop after workshop, after all these years, I still am not letting myself be in that place because I love cannabis so much and my life is stressful. And if it's just there and I have no contract, I find myself, I'm in control.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it and I never go back to the place where there's no awareness or where it's just like, screw it. But I can feel myself, wow, I'm so sucked into the gravitational pull that now I have to actually exert energy and effort to go back out. And I don't want that. And so I always keep myself in check with some kind of a program. And I know that the time when I'm not going to have to do that is going to come. And I even have some thoughts on when it's going to come. Whenever, after my this or that happening with my professional life. Because right now I use cannabis in consulting. So I consult couples and people come to my house to draw on the board and they smoke cannabis so I can tell them what's happening in their mind. And so cannabis is such an important piece of my career that if I don't have a structure around it, it all gets messed. Do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's just a piece of the puzzle for me. But I think that's helping me to teach others.
Mm-hmm.
And one day there's going to come a time where I'm just going to feel it. Like it's just not going to be there anymore as an issue. And who knows, maybe I'll stop teaching it. So that's my spiel for the day. Questions, comments, concerns.
I like the analogy you gave of the kingdom. that actually, I never thought of it that way, but it's true. If you don't, protect your kingdom, then eventually it will get overtaken. And if you just ignore it, let them have that hill, because it's too much of a fight.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And to be honest, I'm still a little reluctant to even start again because of how my pattern in the past, where because I've always been that all or nothing kind of person, which isn't always the best option, but that's just how I've been. And in the past, when I did 3 months before, And then as soon as it was on vacation, it was there, it was tempting. And I'm like, oh, I'm on vacation, but then it just crept back in, or I got sucked into that black hole, and it wasn't like a immediate. I still had to I tried to keep some distance. And I tried to pull back, but then it came back and it came back. And then on the next thing I know, within a month, I was just back to where I was before. Mm. And so I don't want that to happen again, because I am proud of how far I've come in these last 3 months. And I do feel like my word has value, and I don't want to lose that. So I think, and I'm hoping that, when I create this new contract between the inner and the inner child and the inner adult, and apply my word again, that it will be different this time. That's yeah. But I admit there is a part of me that's like, oh shit, what if I what if I mess it up again? And so I was thinking, I think last time we spoke too, I was considering and just reintroducing with CBD first, as a medicine, and not so much going straight back into smoking where it's more psychoactive. But it's CBD, which I know you've mentioned is still somewhat psychoactive, but not to me. It's not to the extent of what I was used to or what I was expecting from the THC. So,
well, it's not addictive.
Yeah. But I think that might be a good option to gradually reintroduce it into my system as a form of medicine. And I don't think that is going to tempt my inner child too much, or if at all, so I still kind of, have this idea with my inner child's like, oh, okay, we're still on a break, but then I can have this other medicine that I'm using for the benefit of it, but not spoiling that inner child, I guess. And, I think my intention when I started was thinking that I get back into it and maybe use it more on special occasions rather than just a daily thing. And I had my birthday a few weeks back, and it was my first birthday. I realized, well, this is my first birthday, and God knows how long that I have not smoked, because it's it's a celebration or just something to do. And I was okay with it. It wasn't a big deal. It's like I enjoyed my birthday. Actually, it was a really nice birthday considering, COVID and that situation. Can't do much. But yeah, I was okay with it. I didn't need it. It wasn't like I sat and thought like, oh man, maybe I should smoke, or, it didn't tempt me as it could have in other situations. But I'm still not sure. I'm planning to do this course. Actually, it starts on the 22nd, which is the day after my break ends. I signed up for this. It's a 30-day course for songwriting, because that's my passion. I'm a songwriter.
Oh, wow.
I write music. I play guitar or instruments, and so I found this course that really appeals to me, and I'm very interested in continuing pursuing that and finishing that. And it's going to require a lot of discipline and time for me to do. It's daily activities because it's 30 days, like kind of like a jam-packed boot camp songwriting course. And I think to myself, well, for one, cannabis has helped inspire me with music, but at the same time, it kind of makes me a little too laid back about it, more casual about it. And I don't think it's going to help in this case to keep that discipline that I need to complete the course and finish all of the deliverables. I mean, you have to write 3 songs within 30 days. And, wow. And so it sounds like it's an intense course, but I'm very much looking forward to it. And I don't think at this point, introducing cannabis will be beneficial for my progress with that. Maybe the CBD won't be an issue. I think I am going to try that. I just need to find the right brand or look more into what would work for me. And I think the times I've tried it in the past, I never really noticed much because I was so used to just smoking cannabis and the psychoactive effects. And that was more what I was going for, because it helped take my mind off things and take my mind off pain and whatnot. But I'd like to see if CBD can help me with my sleep, because that's still been an issue for me. I still struggle with that. I've found some herbal tinctures and things like and melatonin and things that I've been trying that help, but nothing has ever compared to taking a few puffs before bed, and then I'm out within, 10, 15 minutes, and not struggling to fall asleep, and my mind just going over and over the things. And, so we'll see. I think that will be my first introduction, will be the CBD
Yeah.
for
I
at
think
least the
that's
month,
wise. I think
the
that's
month
wise.
that I'm doing this program, this music songwriting program. And then I'll reassess where I'm at then and see, do I want to add in the smoking, and,
Yeah.
and see, maybe that will be, a way to celebrate my accomplishment for completing this course well, this course for one, but this music course that I'm going to start as soon as I'm done with this break.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at, but I'm looking forward to doing the contract and the conversation with the inner child and the inner adult. I've been doing a lot of journaling over these last few months, with these kinds of topics and other parts of my inner child, as well. And so it just all is in line with the work I've been doing overall, on my own personal growth. So I think this
Wonderful.
is going to be, help see me through this and come out with a positive results.
I think that's very wise. First of all, if you're not going to try the CBD alone, then you're not going to have a benchmark. You have an opportunity to
Mhm.
give it a shot now. And it's kind of a unique opportunity after not smoking for a very long time. And for somebody
Mhm.
like you who was really dependent on cannabis for physical reasons, for medicinal reasons, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful idea to try only CBD. It's the time,
Mhm.
and so that's smart. And it sounds to me like you're super careful, and that's good. It's good to be, because that gravitational pull can be strong. At the
Mhm.
same time, don't be afraid of it. You have a word, and it's strong. And um, at some point, we have to we have to try the sword on the battlefield, not just in boot camp, not
Mhm.
just in practice,
Yeah.
in the with the trainer. And when we don't smoke cannabis, then that gravitational pull is not there, because we're clear. Now, do you want to stay away from cannabis for the rest of your life? Maybe, and that's fine. That's excellent, for some. And but if you're thinking you're going to smoke again, THC, that is, if you're going to consume it again, then you want that first introduction in those first few months to be with that mindset that we were talking about, with
Yeah.
a particular contract, because that contract with the word is going to protect you from that gravitational pull and going to
Mhm.
allow you to gauge where you are. And we all have that place in us that, I'm not going to say self-sabotaging, but I'm going to say self-sabotaging.
Mhm.
That place that knows that something isn't good for us and does it anyway. That
Mhm.
place exists,
Yep.
and at some point, when we tickle it, it comes out of its hole,
Right.
and it's a piece of us. It's a piece of who we are. We all have that.
Mhm.
And for some people, no, I don't have it. Yeah, until they do, right? Uh,
Mhm.
it's just there, and we got to learn how to deal with it. We just got to learn how to deal with it, because at some point it'll come up. It could
Right.
be 20 years, but it's there. It's there. So, um, at some
Yeah.
point we gotta face it head on,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And I don't think I could go throughout life with never smoking it again, honestly, because it's something that I have an appreciation for cannabis. There's it's been there for me for for many times. It's been my friend. It's not something that I'm just disowning, like, oh, never gonna see you again. No, there is a special place for it for me. I just want to be able to have that boundary and have that control, which is the whole purpose of doing this program. And I think when I was listening to the video for the program today for day 21 or 22, which is the What's Next video. And you had mentioned the different kinds of contracts that people come up with. And one of them was about the universe. If the universe kind of presents it for you, so you're not really
Yeah.
looking for it, but maybe, it just kind of happens to fall into that place for you where it seems right. Like that time might be right.
Mhm.
I think I might go with that approach, at least to try out. I'll still use with the CBD and see how that works for me. Knowing that I do have the freedom to make that choice if I want, knowing that I do have my word that is strong. And if the situation presents itself and it seems to feel right to me, and I'm not going to judge myself for it, then yeah, maybe I'll give it a try. I think that
Yeah.
might be a good approach for me. Um, because if I do have to have some strict boundaries. I know that with myself.
Yes.
But I think knowing that is going to help me to decipher when it is or is not the right time for me. Um, so I'm still going to think it through. I want to go through the process, have those conversations, do the journaling exercises, and see where I end up. But at least at this point in time, that's kind of feeling the approach that I'm going to take with this.
Excellent. Excellent. And the I'm going to mention, not because I think they're going to hit you, but I'm going to mention the pitfalls of the whole if the universe brings it my way attitude.
Mm,
The pitfalls are that sometimes subconsciously we can start looking for those opportunities. So we start
true.
going to hang out with people who smoke weed because we want the situation to present itself to us. And another piece of the puzzle is what happens if this situation presented itself to us and we're like, but does it feel right or doesn't feel right? And
Hmm.
sometimes it's kind of on the fence.
Hmm.
The situation did present itself. I mean, we didn't do it, it just happened, but it doesn't always feel right because we have something going on tomorrow. Is it right?
Hmm.
Is it not right? So there's a lot of gray area there,
True.
and we need to have discernment and intuition. And so having a voucher, having number of times, and a little bit of rules around it. For example, if I smoked yesterday medicinally and today the situation presented itself, is it the right thing to do to smoke 2 days in a row? Because if you smoke 2 days in a row, day three, you will have that gravitational pull. You will have
Hmm.
cravings because you've smoked 2 days in a row and the body gets used to it very fast.
Hmm.
Um, and so just bear all that in mind. And I
Yeah.
think that it sounds like for you, it's a really great idea. And I have a lot of um, like I'm very I'm not concerned. Let's put it this way. You have a very strong word. I mean, you've encountered practically every temptation known that I've seen when I run my workshops.
Hmm.
You've suffered, you had pain, you had cravings, you had psychological kind of like meltdown thing going on,
Hmm.
and you've pulled through.
Yeah.
And that is impressive, Don. So I want you to take that in because I see people break and use the substance every day in the middle of the program because they just couldn't handle it. And you
Hmm.
did. And so we don't know our own strength until we get the kind of like a benchmark from the outside
Right.
environment. And because we've done it just you and I, you don't get that from the other people. You don't see the differences. And you are one of the strong minded individuals I've met. Now, it could have been also because you didn't want to disappoint me. That might be a factor, but I don't think so because I don't think so. I think it was your energy was driving this. You've made a decision,
Yeah.
and in the beginning of this journey you had an emotional piece that went into it in your thank you letter, and that just gave a flavor to the whole thing, and you were
Hmm.
determined. and you've done it. You have one more week. And
Yeah.
so I just don't see you going in the future. I always tell people, I say, and they say, well, what happens if, and I'm really like scared of going back. What if I get pulled back in? I said, well, listen, it might happen. It might happen. I tell them, this path that you've chosen to take with this course, with this program, is not the easy one. It seems like that to those who say, no, I'm not going to smoke pot again. It seems like that we've taken the easy road because, oh, we have these vouchers. Oh, you're cheating. You guys are cheating. But it's not. It's the harder part, because we chose to go to the enemy on that hill and reconquer that hill. And we're not giving up. And we're saying, I'm not addicted. I will obliterate that dependency, eradicate it, because I have control over my kingdom. I am the master of my own domain. And that's not the easy part. It's not the easy part to be tempted, but that's the spiritual journey. To conquer desire. They tell us that in the Eastern methodologies. And that's what we're doing. And so, I tell these people, sure, it might happen. It might happen that you go back in that spiral, but it will never, ever again happen that you go down that spiral without the observing eye of the inner adult that is now evaluating what just happened from a whole different perspective, because you've gained the tools, you've gained the knowledge. And if you break your word, sure, it's going to suck. You're going to have to redo the whole thing. But you're never going to go back to step one. You're going to go back to a different place. And so I recommend not doing it, because let me tell you, it never leads to a good place. I've done it. I admit I've done it. So how can I judge somebody who caved? Some people haven't. Some of my students have not broken their word, and they've done it. They've done what I couldn't. But at the end of the day, it's like circles, circles, circles. At the end of the day, there's only one place that people like us who are on this journey of regaining command over the use of cannabis, there's only one place we're going to get to, each and every one of us. And it's the place of our freedom, a place of the inner command of the substance, of the decision making. I'm the ruler of my own world. I'm the master of my own domain, and I will not let anything else, any other substance, call the shots for me. And if I have to bleed a few times for that, then so be it. I can tell you that there's always, for every person, there's a place where the substance have bitten them a little too much. That means we've abused it, and we say, yeah, whatever, the word, I'm fine. And we've used it just a little too much. And we felt the sting of that place where that self-destruction, that self-sabotage, whether it's our child, the way they interact with us, or we've seen something in their behavior that mimics us, or maybe it's, for me, it was showing up to my professional environment. And I smoked that previous day, and I had a lecture, and I showed up, and I wasn't on it, and I sucked. And I was there on stage, and I didn't know what to do, and my memory wasn't there, and it was horrible. It was a horrible feeling.
Yep, I know that feeling.
And people are looking at you, and you're like, do they know? Do they know? And it was like somebody came and slapped me, and I will never forget that feeling.
Yeah.
And that did something for me. It traumatized me. And it made me realize how much I'm willing to risk sometimes when that inner child is taking over. And I can't let that happen. I can't. Right. And the solution for me is not to say, oh, I'm never going to smoke cannabis again. No, that's just, it's just, it's just not a solution for me. Not to even mention the fact that I make my living. People are paying me money to smoke cannabis with them. And so, and the entire program is based on it. So if I can't do it for myself, no. Again, okay, I'm going to rebuild the word again because it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question about, because a lot of what I've been learning alongside with your program is, looking into neuroplasticity. I know I brought it up in the beginning, and in the way I see it, when we have a habit, we create those neurotransmitters in our brain that are that feed into that habit. For instance, well, this example, the habit of cannabis. So taking a break from it for as long as I have, so it's, the way I understand it is those neurotransmitters begin to fade. They can begin to dissipate to where it's no longer as active, or the analogy of you walk through a path a few times or several times, and you have a pathway, but if you stop walking through that, it starts to grow over and there's no longer the path. And so the more time without the substance, does that create not stronger neural pathways, but does that kind of sever that path to where it's not you're not as susceptible to it, to the triggers? Or is it, as soon as you smoke, is it just reactivating all of those pathways again?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying to, I can visualize it in my mind, but I don't know how to verbalize it.
I understand. So I think that the analogy that neuroscience is giving us of those, like electrical pathways that are lit, and over time, they get paved. It's a good analogy, and it's kind of how it works. But we have to remember that the brain, okay, the physical brain, where the neural pathways are, is literally just an illusion. It is a reflection of the cognitive abilities that we have, of the conscious perception of reality that we've developed. That is, the neural pathway is a result of us changing the way that we were thinking. Okay? It's not the cause, it is it's the effect. There's a cause and effect. The cause is changing the way we think. If we change the way we think, different neural pathways will be triggered. Now, what is really being paved? What's being paved is language. Consciousness is language. Human consciousness is our ability to interpret the world, interpret our environment, interpret who we are in a different way. When we go into a new course, for example, a songwriting course, and let's say we've never written a song before, the first thing that we learn is all this terminology. Oh, there's a course, and I don't know the terminology, but you go to a woodworking class, and you learn what a chisel is and how to sharpen, and you learn the terminology of the trade. And then you learn the feelings that are associated with this terminology. And what happens, new neural pathways are being paved. Now, if you stop doing woodworking, those neural pathways are not being used. But guess what? They're paved. So you don't remember them. You don't remember the entry. But if you start doing woodworking, they're right there. They're still opening. So it's like learning how to ride a bike. You never forget it. In theory, it should be the same with cannabis. But it's not. Why? Because with cannabis, we have a short-term memory loss that is causing us to lose a lot of the realizations and a lot of the language that we've developed. What happens when we smoke cannabis? THC, high THC, we get all these amazing realizations that when we're clear-minded, will get them every once in a while at a particular, but it's not like the euphoric sense of like, oh my God, I just got it, right? But getting it viscerally doesn't mean that we can repeat it the next day. The next day we wake up and say, oh my God, it was amazing, but I can't quite articulate what just happened. That neural pathway is no longer paved. But if we are in the time of the high, we articulate it. Let's say we record it. We articulate it. The next day we listen to the recording, or maybe we write it down. We read the writing and we repeat it. Oh, I have this pattern where I avoid calling my mother because I blah, 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 whatever, right? I'm just making it up. Some kind of realization that we had. And the next day, when we repeat it, we don't get the same euphoric sense out of it, right? Because that euphoric sense was fake. Sometimes it's good, but mostly it's fake. But if we repeat the narrative, then that neural pathway is paved. The neural pathway is essentially a sexual union between the word, the thinking word, that is the mind, the one in red, and the mindness, the actual feeling, the one in blue, the mindness. Sexual union between them, the narrative and the actual sensation. When they meet, there is a neural pathway, there's electricity, something is born. And when we repeat that again and again, it stays. The vast majority of people who smoked cannabis, in fact, there is a I'm going to open it up. There's let's see, it's right here. Psychedelic drug users tend to have better overall physical health than non-users, study find. I love these things that end with study find. It's like, oh yeah, you can find anything with a study. What does it mean? It means, well, 67%, blah, 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 whatever, right? But it's true. In fact, it's very hard to find in a study, but maybe one day a study will find that psychedelic drug users, which cannabis is a light psychedelic, basically, they're usually more open-minded, more educated, not necessarily educated in school educated, but more streetwise, more open-minded. There's a widening of consciousness that is happening with the use of cannabis. Why? Because we develop empathy, we develop sympathy, we develop different states of consciousness that allow us to expand. And even if we don't do the narrative, something stays with us. So whatever we've smoked and paved is still there, and it's going to be like riding a bicycle, and it's always there. And now it became a part of our being. So we don't even notice that it's there. But when we go back to smoke, what comes back, the neural pathways that reopen or that getting repaved, are those that either were paved and forgotten, or those neural pathways that are only there temporarily to lead us somewhere else. And obviously we can use cannabis to pave neural pathways in particular forms, in particular ways. For example, we can use cannabis to say, I'm going to use cannabis in order to learn how to write short poems, like Dr. Seuss type poems. I've done that at some point. But at some point, I've learned how to do it. And now, oh yeah, of course, if I smoke cannabis, it'll help. But I don't need cannabis in order to do that. Because while I was smoking cannabis, I was developing these methods, and I was noticing what kind of methods I was using. And I wrote them down, and I took the time to go back the next day and read them, and then try it without cannabis. And it was much harder. But then I did it again with cannabis, and then again without, and again without, and again with, and again without. And suddenly I know how to write Dr. Seuss poems without cannabis. That neural pathway is there. It's never going to go away.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
That was a
I'm
very
also
long answer to
it
get.
was
Yes, it does.
no, and it does. I mean that makes sense. But I think I'm thinking more of the thought patterns. So before I stopped, before the break, it was just a continuous thought for me, knowing that it's there, like the cannabis is there, that I can smoke it, that I'll get to smoke it as soon as this is done. It was just like a constant like playing in my head. So, and I know the more we think about something, the more the more we're paving that thought and that craving. And so I noticed, after I've made the decision to stop, and then I stopped, that the first week that thought was there. It kept still going and going, and I was fighting it and fighting the urge, and and reminding myself why I'm doing this, and to a point where it got to where the thought just kind of disappeared. And
Mm,
so I'm thinking, like, in my mind, is that what's happening? Is that thought, that electrical pulse that keeps going off, so it's causing me to think about it, that's gone now. I don't think about it the same way.
yes.
But if I reintroduce it, is it going to light that up again? Is that
I
is that
see. I
thought going
see.
to be come
Uh,
back to
I
where it's like,
completely
oh,
misunderstood your question,
yeah,
and
but
yeah,
what you were saying made sense to me. But yeah, this is kind of
yeah,
where I was thinking is I, like, so the more time of separation from it, the more, say, the longer I, you know, refrain from smoking, am I creating even more distance to where the next time that I did that, it's not going to ignite it so quickly or
yes,
so,
yes,
so strongly, I guess, if that makes sense.
yes. I think that what I found is that it's different with everybody.
Hmm.
It depends how deep was the dependency and how much we liked it. There's a part of our dependency that we really like. We like
Hmm.
the escape. We like this. We like, and sometimes it gets reignited and it's there, and it just boom comes back. It's like, oh, I want that. But that's why the contract is there. Why is it that we keep thinking about the substance? Because it's an option. If it's an option, we think about it. Do I want it?
Hmm.
Do I not want it? Oh, no, I decide I'm not going to do it. But it's there. Do I want it? Oh, maybe now I want it. No, I'm not going to do it. Oh, maybe I should. Oh, it's there. We think about it when it's a possibility. The reason a week after you started the break, you kind of stopped thinking about it, with the exception of when the medicinal properties of it were needed, was
Hmm.
because you didn't remember it. It wasn't an option, so you weren't thinking about it. It wasn't in your conscious perception of reality. The contract does the same. If the contract says, listen, let's say, just for example, you can smoke, you have a voucher for 4 times when in the next 3 months, when the universe delivers it your way, or maybe once a month,
Hmm.
and you can't transfer, you can do whatever you want, right? But you can play with it. Let's say you say once a month you have a voucher for the universal mother delivers it your way. Then you're not going to be thinking about it when you're in your home, because it's not a possibility for you to smoke when you're home according to your contract.
Hmm.
But when the universe delivers it to you, you're going to be thinking, ooh, should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Boom. You're going to, let's say you decide to do it. Then again, it's no longer an option. If the contract is too loose, you're going to start thinking about it. We only think about it when it's a possibility. Now, you've done such a long break that the habit is no longer there. We've weeded out the habit. That's what it's called, weed out the habit.
Yeah.
And so the habit is what's causing us to think about it more and more and more, because the habit creates a craving out of its own merit, even if
Hmm.
it's not a possibility.
Hmm.
And so you have the habit and you have the possibility. When they both exist, you can't stop thinking about it.
Right.
So make sure that the habit stays dead. It's no longer a habit. It's just, you know, it's just an occasional thing that happens that's kind of cool. And make sure that the possibility is not there with the contract. You'll be safe.
Okay. I think I get it.
You got to dive into it. It's like,
Yeah.
the diving instructor is telling you what to do after you jump from the airplane. And you say, well, I think I get it. Is it this string that I have to pull? You say,
Right.
well, yeah, but
Yeah.
you're only going to
Gotta
feel
do
it
it.
after you jump off the plane.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So
Okay.
you in Kabbalah, in the science of the psyche, we say you got the intelligence, the
Hmm.
smarts, but you still need the wisdom. You need the experience. Wisdom come out of experience.
Right.
You need the understanding, or maybe you can call it wisdom and understanding. You have the wisdom, that, well, not really. I think wisdom is coming from the word wise. We only become wise after the experience. So we have the smarts, you have the information, but you still need to you know to literally unify it. It's that sexual union with you have the words, you have the knowledge,
Hmm.
but you need the experience. And the experience will solidify it into place, because you're going to feel it. You're going to feel that, oh, yeah, I'm starting to think about it. Why? Well, because I've smoked 2 days in a row.
Hmm.
Habit. Oh, I'm starting to think about it. Why? Because it's a possibility. Because my contract says that I can smoke once, 1 weekend a month, and it also says that I can smoke I if I feel that it's right. If somebody does a very loosey goosey contract, right?
Hmm.
Well, I kind of feel that it's right, but I already smoked 1 weekend, and so, but I really want to. It's a possibility to
Hmm.
think about it. The mind just chatters, right?
Hmm.
Cut it off. It's not a possibility, you know.
Okay. Yep. It's
Yeah,
gonna.
I wish it was
It'll.
easier, but
I know it's just a challenge, and I think it's a way to continue to grow and strengthen just in general. Because it's not just cannabis, but there's always these situations that present themselves where we have to have that make that choice
yeah,
and be able to have that inner authority for various things that can show up along the way. And so I like to take what I've learned from you and also apply it into other areas as well, because
yeah,
there's a lot of value in that, I think.
yeah. It's the same. It's the same with
Hmm.
smoking cigarettes. It's the same
Hmm.
with any type of addiction, any
Yeah.
type. I have a
Yep.
lecture on Tuesday in Hebrew, a lecture on addiction as a form of amnesia. And it's the same. I
Hmm.
used to be addicted to sugar. I would sit down. I know that I don't look it, but it would cause me itching, not fattening, right? And I would sit down and I would eat like, it sounds stupid, but the popsicles in Israel are so good, much better than the US. And I would eat like 6, 7 popsicles, one after the other at
Hmm.
like 11 p.m. And then ice cream, right? And then I wouldn't sleep well. My
Hmm.
my leg will be jittering, and
Hmm.
I would be like, like, because there's so much sugar in my system, and I would wake up tired. And it's so simple. It's so simple. It's like, Erez, just don't do it. But 10 p.m. would come, 11 p.m. would come, and I want my popsicles because I'm used to it, the habit. It's the
Habit.
same thing. It's the
Right.
same thing. Now I have to get used to it. Now I have to, you know, weed out the habit, weed out the habit. And I always say, cannabis is not the point here.
Right.
It's I'm not going to go consult people how to stop smoking cigarettes, because I don't smoke cigarettes. So who am I to say? I don't
Yeah.
know the details, but in things I've experienced, I can speak to to the specifics. And that's cannabis, sugar, food, sleep. I've been addicted to sleep. The more you sleep, the more you're tired. I can
Hmm.
tell you that. It's the same with
Hmm.
sugar. The more you eat it, the more you want it. And it's
Yeah.
the same with cannabis. The more you smoke it, the more you want it.
It's
So
true.
the more you need it.
I I can say though I did used to smoke cigarettes, and it was a lot easier for me to quit smoking cigarettes than cannabis. Actually, I know, but I
Wow.
don't think everyone can say that for themselves, because I know
No.
nicotine's very addictive. But yeah, I did smoke for over 15 years, and I was able
Wow.
to quit. Um, without any. It was a cold turkey too, but it was a different relationship I had with it than I did with cannabis.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it. Cannabis was more comforting to me and had more benefits than cigarettes. So that's why it was easy to give up for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Don, do you have any other questions, or should we close?
No, I think I'm good. That's a lot to take in, and I want to think it all through and continue with the remaining days of the program and do the journal prompts and probably re-listen to this podcast again just to because there's a lot of information you provided, and I think I'm good. So like I said, going to try with the CBD. Actually, one question with the CBD, because I've heard CBD isn't effective unless you have the combination with a little bit of THC. And there's other products out there that have no THC. So I've there's like two different camps when it comes to CBD. There's the ones that say you don't need the THC, and others are like, you're wasting your time if there's no THC, because they kind of complement each other and they don't work the same. It doesn't work the same without the THC. So I was curious if you had any comments on that.
It's one of those things that you have to try for yourself and see. In some products, the relationship between THC and CBD is fairly high. It could be 3-to-1 THC to CBD. So there's 3 times as much THC to CBD, but there's the opposite. There's 3 times CBD to THC. There's a lot of products. There's almost always a little bit of THC, almost always, like minute amounts. It's one of those things that you have to try for yourself. And for you, I would recommend. Well, I don't like to recommend. I would say if I were you, what I would do is I would use clean CBD, which means it's going to have very minor amounts, traces of THC. Why? Because the point here is not to speed up the thinking mind. The point here is to alleviate pain, or depends what you want. Now, if you want to reintroduce the psychoactive effect, then you can go to a mixed CBD THC product. I don't like them. I've never liked them. It never did it for me. THC encourages the reuptake of the neurons in the cannabinoid receptors, which means essentially the reuptake means that the neuron goes back into that same synapses. So you're basically mentally masturbating on the same thought, which it means you're going deeper, 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 deeper. And so with THC, because it encourages that reuptake, your thought becomes so deep, so focused, but so narrow-minded. It's like taking a flashlight and lighting it on one specific spot. And you're looking only on that, and everything else gets blackened out. And that's why we have that memory loss. With CBD, inhibits the reuptake of the neurons in the neuropathy, in the receptors. And so they work the opposite. And so some people say, well, you want the THC so you can get those kind of glimpse, that dive ins, but then it jumps to a different synapses because that CBD prevented it from, going back to the same one. And so you move around, but, you sort of get like this combination of breadth and depth of thought. Never worked for me. Never. It's just that I think there was one joint I can remember. There was a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 THC, 1 CBD, that I felt like it was a nice high. It didn't have that spike, and I had less side effects later. But I never went back to buy it. So that tells you something.
Yeah.
When I smoke, I want to feel the effect. I want to take my mind for a ride. And I got the horses. I got the track. I want to run.
Right.
But that's me. Everybody's different. So I think it's a matter of preference. And, we can,
I think I'll experiment. I'll try just the CBD first. Give it a month with that. Maybe I'll try with a little bit of THC. I'm just curious. I think I want to use it as an experiment. I'm curious to see
Yeah.
And yeah, since my system is clean now, it's a
I
good
would
time to
climb
try it.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
go only CBD, especially because you want it for medicinal purposes.
Yeah.
Then introduce the mix, see how it feels. If it's enough for you, stay with it, because
Mhm.
the super addictive is always going to be the cleaner the THC, the more you're closer to the gravitational pull of that black hole.
Mhm.
So see where you're at.
Yeah. All right.
I'm counting on you. I have no doubt you will succeed. You're
Yeah,
a
I will.
strong individual. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. And so I want to meet again to see how it's
Okay.
going,
Okay.
and what kind of contract you've done with yourself. And
Okay.
let's stay in touch via email and see when's the next time we're gonna broadcast.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you again for all of your assistance and support and knowledge and wisdom and everything. It's been very helpful for me, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And I want to thank you for your honesty, for your open-minded, open mind, for your willingness to go through with it, and for your tenacity in this process. I've learned a lot from you. I really appreciate the opportunity to help you with this, and thank you for taking weed out the habit, for taking consciously high. It's I mean, it's really it brings me up. It's like. Ruach uh, how do you call the wind in my back, like that pushes you forward?
The wind in your sails, or
Yeah, the wind in my sails. When I
yeah.
see somebody using the program and it helps them, it's not for everybody, but
Mhm.
it definitely made a shift in your life, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. So I'll talk to
Okay.
you again,
Yeah.
and I want to thank our listeners. Thank you so much for listening to this journey, Don's journey, and to this podcast. I've definitely taken a break from speaking about cannabis and any other perspective, almost, except for one episode about autism, with the exception of, other than the topic of dependency. It's a topic that's been taking a lot of my time. I've never thought I'll be dealing with it on a regular basis, but there's not a day passing by when I'm not teaching or discussing it. And I guess it's been always a part of my path. And it was a humbling realization. But if I haven't suffered so much from that dependency, it wouldn't have been the case. And it's just a piece of the puzzle for me. So I want to thank you all for listening. And if you want to access Consciously High, it's available on weedoutthehabit.com. And thank you again. Goodbye.